Okay, welcome to the hearing of by Zoom of the Local Historic District Commission. Our purpose is to aid property owners in the town in preserving and protecting the distinctive characteristics and architecture of buildings and places significant in the history of Amherst. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting can do so via Zoom or by telephone, and a hyperlink to the hearing will be posted on the town's online calendar. We require one of 3 certificates to ensure that new construction and most alterations of exterior architectural features in the district meet requirements. And for today's hearing, we will review an application filed by somebody who lives on Sunset. And I think that is our only one for today. This hearing is open to the public and is being recorded. We will make a decision hopefully today. We'll start by having let's start by taking roll call. Oops, I've just lost my picture. Here we go. Betty?
Here.
Nicole?
Here.
Karen?
Here.
Bruce?
Here.
Frida?
Here.
And I'm here, Nancy Banner. Walker, would you like us to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, or is that not necessary?
It doesn't hurt to have a vote saying that you approve them.
Okay, can we have just a voice vote of approval for the minutes that Walker has provided? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, then I think we can move to the summary of the first item on the agenda. And Walker, would you like to explain that one to us?
Yes, so they are proposing to replace the roof and remove 2 chimneys, and in order to be able to put solar panels on the house. They'll also be replacing the roof of the porch while they're at it. They currently have slate on a portion of the house and asphalt on the rest, and they're going to take the slate off and replace it with asphalt to match the remaining roof. The panels themselves are exempt from review per the regulations, and the roof replacement may be as well. It's primarily the removal of the 2 chimneys, I think, that you'd be looking at. And I don't know if anybody in the audience is here for this project and wants to speak, but otherwise I can share pictures if you'd like, or provide more information.
Okay. It looks like we do have 2 attendees in the audience, but I don't think either of them is from this project.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. Do we have any questions about this project from members? Betty?
I had a question. Is it necessary to remove the chimneys in order to put the solar panels on?
Walker, do you know the answer to that question?
I don't actually know. I was hoping that the applicant would be here to answer questions, but I'm not sure if the chimneys are just in poor condition and not being used, and that's why they're removing them, or if it's that they're in the way of the solar panels.
We could look at the plan and tell, I think.
Yeah, let me take a look at the plan.
And the photographs, sorry.
Greta?
I have a question about the slate. We have a slate roof too, and I keep getting these solar slate, put slate up on your solar. It used to, I would say 5 years ago even, it couldn't be done, but now there's a lot of innovations in putting up solar, and I think it's a beautiful house, that Queen Anne with the shingles, and the slate is just gorgeous and adds to the house, particularly coming down when you're walking north on Sunset. You see the slate, it's really quite beautiful. And I don't know what kind of slate it is. I did some research. I looked with binoculars at the slate, and to me, now I'm just a slate roof owner, but I know what slate that needs repaired to be repaired looks like. For instance, it starts getting really dull and crack and little pieces come off, but their slate looks quite beautiful to me. And so I did some research, and a lot of the local slate, if they use local slate, lasts 200 years. So I would ask the owner, Mr. Roof, by the way, to investigate keeping that beautiful slate. It's so, I know he's a professor of ecology, I think, but to throw all of that slate in the dump and then put asphalt up seems a real waste if it could be saved. And I think if it didn't look as to me as if it needed repair, but if it did, I'm sure it would be much more ecological and beautiful for our neighborhood, for preserving the distinct architecture of our neighborhood, as Nancy said earlier, to keep the slate and then try to use a solar that goes on slate. And just a quick Google search, I found maybe 5 companies that do that, including one that came to my mailbox, which I don't know anything about, but anyway, that's my take on it. I think the slate is a beautiful part of the house, and it seems maybe 5 years ago, you might have had to get rid of the slate, but I don't think you do anymore, and it's beautiful slate that adds to the house.
Bruce, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was going to let Karen go first.
Karen?
Thank you. I just walked by the house again and kind of around the house. The only part of the house that has the asphalt is the back, which looks like an extension that was put on later. And that's not as visible. So I think that certainly they can put metal or whatever they want. The rest of it, I agree with Greta we're not experts. Certainly, I wish they were here to see what advice they had been given, but visible is the slate and the first 2 parts of it, and it is a big part of the house. So I agree with Greta, would urge them to try to keep it so much nicer.
Bruce, did you have a comment now?
Yes, it's interesting. I'm not sure, Greta, whether the circular that you've received or has to do with the technology for mounting PVs onto slate roofs, or whether you're talking about particular types of PVs that take the place of slate and they're small. It's the former, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
mean, this actually just came to my address, and that's what it talks about. But I also did a Google search, and it's a new way of attaching the slate. I mean, attaching the solar that doesn't hurt the slate. And because I have a slate roof, I earlier looked in, like maybe 10, 15 years ago, I looked into solar. Well, I didn't, because I knew that you couldn't do it on slate, but now you can. And there's more than one company that specializes in that. And I think ecologically, in terms of beauty, in terms of the neighborhood and the architecture, it would be worth looking into.
Yes. I certainly think that it's unfortunate that the applicant isn't here, and that maybe we should move to continue so that they can be, because there are. But speaking to the proposition of putting PV over slate, it's people claim they can do it, but we don't really know how successfully. The problem that we find with PVs is that PVs have a very long life, and you really need to put them over a roof that has as long a life. Otherwise, you've basically shortened the life of the PV system, because if, for example, you put them over asphalt shingles, and I would certainly suggest that we do not approve the use of asphalt shingles in place of the slate. I think putting up metal, standing seam metal, is a different proposition, because that's an elegant and kind of, in my view anyway, appropriate, to use our word, alternate roofing material, particularly if the slates are in some way compromised, because slates, do have a lifespan, or B, if the sense is that the applicant really wants to have a roof that they know can reliably last the length of the PV system. We have a number of instances in town and elsewhere where people put put PVs over roofs that they hadn't thought it through properly. They forced to remove the PV system after 20 or 25 years, and it's not economical to put it back. And so you've basically cut the life of the PV system in half by being insufficiently mindful of the substrate that you're putting it on. Slates are only as good as the nails or the fasteners that they are attached with, and it's not uncommon to have to reapply slate as those fasteners decay in one way or another. So it's a bit of a risk for somebody who's investing in PV. I understand putting it over slate, and I wouldn't trust the judgment of the industry necessarily on this. I wouldn't discount it, but I would be skeptical a little bit. So I would really think that the appropriate thing here is to ask the owner to say, have they thought that, basically answer Greta's question, ask them whether they really like the slate and they just feel that they're having to do, as I'm thinking, put on a more durable substrate in order to validate the investment in the PVs, or whether the slates themselves are somehow reached or are reaching the end of their lives. So there's a couple of questions there that we don't have the answers to, and to make a decent decision, I think we should, because this is a consequential application in a way, because PVs are, 100 years from now, this will be a historic thing, that what happened when people started trying to turn their roofs into generation platforms. So I think we should be mindful of making a decision that's going to hold up here. And I think we need the applicant for some assistance in that regard. But I certainly am conscious of the rather complicated decision making involved in putting PVs on roofs.
Walker,
So I went back and looked at the original application. They do actually say that they're considering either asphalt or standing seam metal as a replacement. They hadn't decided yet for the slate. And then they did explain that the chimneys are in danger of toppling over, so they're being removed because they're in bad shape and they're not being used. And then I just was curious, because I'm pretty new to this. It does say in the regulations that installation of asphalt shingles to replace dissimilar asphalt or other roof materials is exempt or doesn't require review. So I'm not sure maybe you can all tell me what level of purview you have over that particular change.
That seems unfortunate. I would have thought that that would be one of the things we absolutely would want to have some say over.
Well, the exemption to me says asphalt to asphalt doesn't need approval.
It says asphalt or other roof materials.
Similar roof materials. Slate is not similar at all to asphalt.
It doesn't use the word similar. It just says to replace dissimilar asphalt or other roof materials. So I don't know if the intention was things that were similar to asphalt, but it's not clear in the wording.
I think I thought the intention was that if you were replacing your roof, you have an asphalt roof, you didn't have to come in and say, I'm going to go to a different color of roof, or I'm going to go to a slightly different style of asphalt. But it's asphalt to asphalt, as opposed to slate to asphalt. We can research that and continue this, because if we don't have the right to make the decision, then they should know that. Since they're not here to defend their project, I think it might make sense for us to continue this. Excuse me, Greta, did you have something else?
Well, I also want to continue rather than, because I think depends on what Walker finds out, but I think it's a huge difference to go from historic slate to asphalt. And I think it would change the character of that Queen Anne. I also think that maybe the owner isn't aware of the new innovations in solar. And so it might be to his advantage, because it would be less expensive. And a lot of the slate in this area, if it's Buckingham slate or unfading green slate from Vermont, it has a 200-year lifespan, and their house is 100, I don't know, 40 years old maybe. So a slate expert and then somebody that knows about different kinds of solar might solve both problems and be advantageous for Mr. Roof. Anyway, that's my thinking.
Do I have a motion to continue this?
I'll make the motion, my experience from my planning board, is that you continue a meeting to a date and time certain.
Yes, we need a date for that.
So, so that, and we are in the habit of meeting, on demand. So do we have a meeting scheduled that we can continue this to, or do we have to nominate one?
We
There's
need to
another-
set one.
Yeah, well, there's one proposed for April 14th for the application that came in last
Oh,
week.
that's true. Mhm.
So we could
We
do
could
April 14th.
Continue it to the April 14th.
Okay, so I move the continuation of the hearing to 3:10 on April the 14th, 2025.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Shall we take a vote then? Karen,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yep.
Betty,
Yes.
Greta,
Yes.
and I too agree. So we will continue this to April 14th at about 3. It will be the first item on our agenda. Thank you. All right, so the next thing on the agenda is.
I'm
Yes?
sorry.
Sorry.
Could I ask a question? So, will Walker be contacting the owner to ensure that they come to that meeting and give them a sense of what we discussed?
Yeah, I will let them know what your questions and concerns are and inform them of the new date. And they probably will also have to sign a waiver because we may not get this within the 60-day deadline with the continuation. So I'll give them the waiver for that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Walker, can I ask, how strenuously do you represent that their presence of applicants at this meeting is required or desired, or?
I guess typically I hadn't been saying either way unless someone asked, in which case I recommended that they appear, but maybe I should add that into my comments on the
I think there's a
permit,
rule.
just to recommend that they should come.
We
case there are
should,
questions.
I could say, so I would suggest that you could represent that it is the expectation of the commission that applicants appear in
Mhm.
conjunction with their application. And
Looks like
using
he's
that-
here now, though.
Oh, all right.
Oh,
Well,
Maybe we should-
can you bring him into the meeting?
yeah. Steve, I'm gonna
Uh,
bring you in because there are some questions.
Well, we've continued the hearing, so we can't really.
Well,
Can
just
we?
explain to him what we've done.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. But bear in mind that the hearing is continued, so we can't really behave in the way we would have behaved if he had have arrived before the continuation.
Hello
looks like
there.
you're
This is
here.
Hi,
Steve.
Hello, Steve. So welcome to our meeting. I'm afraid you've come in just after we finished discussing your project. And we've decided to continue it to our next meeting on April 14th. We'll make you the first thing on the agenda. And the concern is that there are several members of the commission who feel that to get rid of your slate roof at this point would be a very sad event. And we're advising that that probably is not what we will recommend in the end.
What may I make a comment and press my case for the replacement?
Are we allowed to do that?
Well, I think we can hear, but we
He
can't
can make a
act.
public comment, but you can't discuss it.
Okay. Speak.
Wow, the slate roof is nice, but is very expensive to repair. The quote that I got for simply repairing the roof was $65,000. And that involved replacing some of the shingles that are broken and adding an ice band around the lower perimeter. The contractor who gave me that said that that would be good for perhaps 5 years, and then it would need maintenance every 5 years or more frequently after that, to the tune of $5,000 to $10,000 each time. And there's very few people in the valley that do slate repairs anymore. It's kind of a dying art. In addition to that, my goal was to put solar on the roof, which would generate both renewable energy and lower the electricity bills for me and the tenants. It's a 2-bedroom, a 2-unit apartment. I pay the heat for the place. The tenants do not. So if I was forced to keep the slate, that would be a huge financial hit to me for not being able to put the solar panels on the rooftop. But I would argue that I guess in this case, that there'd be an extreme financial cost to keeping the slate roof that is impractical. Well, yeah, quite high, impractical, and plenty of historic buildings that are covered with metal roofs, both today and have been covered with metal roofs for decades.
Bruce, did you want to say something?
Yes, but I think Greta had her hand up before me.
Greta?
I was just going to say that I also have a slate roof and I live in the historical neighborhood, but what I've gotten in the mail is a company called Solar Slate, and they specialize in putting solar on slate roofs. So I don't think if you kept the slate, I mean, that's a different question, but I think you can do slate. You didn't used to be able to put solar on slate, but now there's new innovations that allow you to. And this Solar Slate company just came in my mailbox, but I've researched, since I got that, I researched other companies. So it is possible to put solar on slate. So
that is not what I've heard from the solar companies I've spoken to. They will absolutely refuse to deal with existing slate roofs. Perhaps you're referring to what is a new solar or new slate roof.
This is actually for existing roofs, and it's an apparatus that allows you to put on. But I can send you these, and you can just look at them if you want. I don't know. I didn't put slate. I mean, I didn't put.
Sure, I'd be interested in that. But like I said, the companies that I've spoken with just completely steer clear of slate. They don't want anything to do with it, because once they put solar on the roof, they're responsible for any leakage. And there's just too fragile of a roof to work on.
So I also wondered if you know what kind of slate your roof is. I went over and looked at it with my binoculars to see if I could identify it. And there's and it all has different lifespans. That's why I wondered. And it's actually quite beautiful. You have a lovely house.
I don't know what type of slate it is. I'm a geologist and I know what slate is, but I don't know that the different types of roofing slate.
So I'm only, you weren't here, so I was just thinking about it.
Thank you.
It might be worth getting another estimate and seeing what kind of slate and how long its life is, because Buckingham slate is 200 years, Green Vermont is 200, some are less. So that would be something, whether you put money in it or not. I'm not saying, I mean, that sounds like a really expensive fix for that slate. We get ours fixed occasionally, like a piece of slate will fall off and we have it re-put up, but we'd never pay that much. Anyway, that's just my take on it.
Okay, Bruce?
Walker, are you anywhere near Nate or in town hall where we could, because I'm not sure that we can't reopen the meeting. I just don't know. I'm under the circumstances, we might choose to do that.
Yeah, I
Or-
can run and go see if he's available. He's in his office.
Okay, I think
Yes.
that would be helpful, because since Mr. Roof is here, we can talk to him. It seems a
Save a lot
shame
of
to,
time.
yeah.
I'll run and ask.
Thank you.
Yes, and while Walker's away, Steve, I made a comment that Bruce called them. I'm the architectural presence, I guess, on the commission has 7 slots. 2 of us are non-residents. I mean, we are residents, or at least I am, but I'm not here because I'm a resident, certainly not in the historic district. I'm here because I'm a retired architect, and Nicole has real estate association. So we have a realtor, we have an architect, and we have 5. That's the way it's composed. So my observations on the commission are very often have to do with some of the more technical aspects of the situations that we confront. And I did have mentioned to my colleagues that when you're putting PV systems up, you want to know that the roof underneath it is going to have at least the life of the system. Otherwise, you are shortchanging a very expensive PV system, which sadly or fortunately lasts a very long time, 40 plus years. And getting a roof that's 40 plus years is challenging. I would certainly not want to see shingles replacing slate here, but I could see replacing it with metal. And I think that I can head into that direction. My position here is a little different perhaps than my colleagues. We don't know because we haven't fully discussed it yet. But we do think that this is an important decision. We haven't had an application like yours before about trying to evaluate how we feel about the historic significance of slate versus the reasonable and important initiative of putting PV on. And so we're trying to get a balance there. I guess one question I'd ask before Walker is how urgent is this for you? Would a continuation to March 14th to allow you to follow up what Greta's because it seems to me that might have some legs, but I certainly would be surprised, frankly, as I think your experience is probably going to be what we would find out. But I would like to know whether this technology really does offer some kind of reliable, durable guarantee that PVs can be put on slates, because that would be news to me. But would a continuation be a problem for your schedule? Could you stand that?
The roof, the upper roof, the slate roof is not currently leaking. There are slates falling off. The more urgent roof is actually the lower metal roofs that are orange colored, covering the porches around the perimeter. Those are on the verge of leaking, and I do want to get those replaced right away, but the lower roof work should be done after the upper roof work. I wouldn't want new lower roofs and then have a lot of work done on the upper roofs.
Good.
I've spent the last 6 weeks or so searching out and evaluating different contracts. Evaluated asphalt, slate, also metal shingles, aluminum metal shingles that do have a little bit more of a traditional look if you're not looking too closely. And I did want to move forward so that both the roofing could be repaired this spring and get the PV installed shortly after that.
Have you looked at these synthetic rubber slates?
That was not something I found a contractor local that that installed those.
They're installed much the same as I mean, it's just a roofer. You just give him a different product. I've had them on my house for many years. They're actually the library was considering putting the Jones Library was considering putting them on until
It's like a synthetic slate.
Yes, it's made of. They used to be made of old car tires, and they have got a. You can't tell the difference easily from even 6 feet away. But again, it's not as durably guaranteed waterproof as I think a metal roof. It seems to me that a metal roof is what I typically recommend people put under PVs, because it's a roof that guarantees the life of. I mean, the durability of the roof is a 50-year.
Right.
A 50-year deal, and so is the PV. So they go together. So I can certainly see that why you would be heading in that direction.
Well, yeah, and I made all those comparisons from replacing this, maintaining the slate, replacing it with asphalt, replacing it with aluminum shingles, and replacing it with steel. And my conclusion was that even though the steel is perhaps twice the cost, you get at least twice the longevity of it. And it's much more sustainable in that steel is a recycled product. It's not a petroleum product. And one steel roof would probably outlast 2 asphalt roofs and reduce landfill waste by quite a few tons.
That's more than
having
2.
Instead of going through 2 asphalt roofs.
Walker?
So unfortunately, the verdict is that because you've already continued the hearing to a date certain, you cannot reopen it at this time. You have to wait till the 14th.
All right, but so I'm sorry, Mr. Root, but we do have to continue it.
Could I,
again.
wait, may I ask the question then? If I go with asphalt, I understand that that is not under the jurisdiction of the local historic commission. I believe that's an option that is allowed as,
That's something that I also wanted to clarify with.
I think I
someone
would go with asphalt
longer.
rather than waiting for the extension at this point.
Walker, were you able to find out if that was really the distinction?
Did not think to ask Nate that while I was over there.
Well,
It's
that would-
unclear from the regulations whether it's just replacing asphalt with asphalt, if you can replace a dissimilar roof with asphalt or not, which one the,
Well, that would be a question for the building commissioner.
Yeah.
Rob Morrow would tell you whether he would give you a permit to do that. So we could short circuit that by
I could-
sending you
yeah.
to Rob. But I wouldn't recommend it, Steve. I think that you're going to have when you're 80, which is when you don't want to have these problems.
Well, I agree with that. I'd much would rather have a metal roof than the longevity and the sustainability elements of it.
Yeah.
I think in any case, keeping the slate roof is financially infeasible. And I would request a waiver based on the financial costs of it. My preference would be to go with a metal roof, but keeping the slate roof that's up there is just simply not feasible for maintaining the house.
Karen?
And I haven't looked into, I haven't looked into the synthetic slate. The rubberized slate that you were mentioning, Bruce. Or other, I guess
Yeah.
the closest product would have been these aluminum shingles that are embossed to have a somewhat slate-like look to them.
Yeah, Majestic Slate is one of the brands that I remember. I think that might still be a producer. You could Google Majestic Slate and, well, I can Google Majestic Slate and see what comes up, and I'll tell you whether it's still functioning.
Karen?
I think we're all in favor of your doing what's best for the house ecologically, and I know that it certainly sounds like you also want to. I think we're more just recommending, is it possible that there are new things on the market that it might be advantageous, since you're going to spend so much money, to just look at the option that Greta has, not that we're forcing you to not have the slate, but to look, our recommendation as a local is to look at that option. Maybe, if you looked at we also have solar on asphalt here in the historical district, but it really is worth it to, with a house like this. What we're saying is we love your house, and we just want to urge you to do all this. Maybe you already have, but maybe there are new things that one could look at. And it might save you money at the end if there is in fact another company that specializes in putting it on slate. If not, I don't think anybody here is going to force you to keep a slate roof that costs $60,000 to maintain.
Well, that's kind of exactly what it sounded like.
No, I don't.
The other point to keep in mind is that when the solar goes on the roof, all but a narrow strip on the side and along the ridgeline will be covered by the solar panels on the south side, and that's the only side that is visible from public way. The north side would not be covered, but that's nearly invisible because of the trees that are to the north of the house.
Mhm.
But no matter, I think it's, if you want to proceed, Steve, you'd have to uh, get the approval of the building commissioner on whatever basis he would decide that this commission wasn't an appropriate certificate of appropriateness was not required, because we just found out that unfortunately our hands are tied. We can't continue deliberation on this until, no matter much as we'd like to. I mean, now we have you here, we could do that, but we've apparently the die is cast on that, so we can't continue our deliberations until April 14. That's unfortunate. I think we should be able to reopen hearings in situations like this, and maybe in future we won't close the hearings until the end of until we've done everything else. We haven't had this situation before, Steve, and I'm, at least it's the 7 years that I've been on this, and I'm the longest standing member. So it's an unfortunate wrinkle that we've run into here. So we're sorry about that.
Well, I'm looking at the bylaw right now, and it's quite clear that installation of asphalt shingles to replace dissimilar asphalt or other roofing materials is not subject to approval of the local historic district commission. So what you're kind of pushing me towards is to go with the asphalt shingles if I want to do the job without waiting another 3 weeks.
The building commissioner may allow you to put metal as a replacement on the same basis. I mean, ask him that question as well, if that's the direction. And then you've got the chimneys, which we didn't even get to.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, okay, so you're suggesting that I might be able to get the building commissioner to rule that a metal roof is not, could be approved by a certificate of non-applicability.
I would try that and explain the circumstance.
Right. Then the chimneys was the other issue. That was the one area which I thought the local historic district commission might have jurisdiction. But I would say that if you haven't discussed that component of it, then the hearing was incomplete. And maybe that's a reason to be able to reopen the hearing.
Sadly, no.
Well, how can you close a hearing if you didn't consider all aspects of my request?
Well,
We
because
tried, I'm sorry, excuse me, we tried to consider it, but because you weren't here, we were unable to. The timing of your arrival was unfortunate. And I'm sorry that we can't continue with this conversation, but I think we really have to continue that part into the 14th.
The other thing I noticed in the rules and regulations was that when the commission was to do a site visit, the applicant was to be notified. I was never notified that you were going to be taking a site visit, and I'm sort of disappointed that I didn't have a chance to accompany you during that site visit.
did we do
Because
one?
we didn't have a whole commission site visit. We went as individuals.
My understanding is the site visit is required before
Oh.
the hearing, and the notification of the applicant is also required before that site visit.
I'm not aware of any requirement for a site visit.
No, we seldom have site visits. I would say we have site visits in 5% of the number of applications because site visits are difficult to organize, and it's when you've got complicated circumstances, we do it. But if it's just a matter of us doing some due diligence about at least understanding where the house is, then we don't need to organize a site visit for that purpose as a group. We habitually do it individually. That's been the way we've practiced, and that's pretty much the standard operation for us.
Well, then you might want to double check your rules and regulations. At section 3.4, I'm looking at it, says that shall view all properties that come before it by application unless building commissioner has determined the issue, blah, 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 that it's non-applicability. So this seems to suggest that language that a site visit is required unless the building commissioner is determined to issue or recommend that the commission issue a certificate of non-applicability, in which case the chair may waive a site visit. And then
I'll-
it goes, applicants shall be notified of the site visit and should be prepared to meet with the commission at the site.
I can talk to the building commissioner about this as well, whether he considers commissioners individually driving by the site as fulfilling that requirement to view the properties, or if he thinks that you should be doing scheduled group site visits, because I don't think that part is clear. So I can confirm with him.
Thank you, Walker. I think that would be helpful for us to know for the future. And
Yes, and does
Mhm.
require the applicant to be notified before site visit. So that seems to preclude the possibility of individual commission members making site visits.
Believe that in my experience, at least, a site visit implies entering the property, whereas if the commissioners drive by and remain on the public way, that is not considered a site visit. And in some cases, they may be able to gain the information they need without entering the property, and that's the distinction. But I will definitely check with the commissioner.
Yeah, check with that, because it does just specifically refers to exterior architectural elements.
Yeah, which is, I think, why traditionally site visits aren't held with this committee, because usually you can determine everything you need from the public way. There's rarely a need to enter the property. But again, I will check.
Karen, did you have something
Right,
you
well,
wanted
this
to
is,
say?
I'm really frustrated that
Yeah, I,
that
know,
that
I
you
do-
made the
I-
decision to not allow me to replace the slate.
I think, we could, as a commission, I understand your frustration. It is a matter of 3 weeks, and sometimes in 3 weeks you could get other, it sounds like you're still a little bit undecided whether to use metal or rubber, and now we've suggested other things, but we don't want.
I went through a long procedure to decide between those four options: keeping the slate, asphalt, metal, aluminum metal shingles that are embossed to look like slate, and the raised seams, standing seam metal.
You've made a decision.
I made my decision on that, and I didn't think the roofing material was going to be germane to my application to the local historic district commission. I thought the only thing that you would rightly be concerned with was the chimneys, removing the chimneys.
Just to clarify, we have not ruled that you are not allowed to use asphalt. What we've asked is to continue this conversation on April 14th. And at that point, we'll decide what we think we want to recommend. But we haven't made a decision that would not allow you to use the asphalt at this point.
Well, it's the metal that I prefer to use. And I also, before I can proceed, I need to know if the chimneys can be removed.
I think the commission has not said anything in opposition to using metal at this point. I have not heard anything to that effect. So I don't think you should proceed thinking that you're not going to get permission to get you to use metal.
But then I'm not understanding what you still need to decide.
We were waiting to be able to talk to you. Unfortunately, there's this not very flexible rule, apparently, which I was not actually aware of, that once you've continued an item on the agenda, you can't return to it if someone then appears. So it's an unfortunately inflexible rule. I'm not happy about it, but it seems to be keeping us from giving you what you would like at this meeting. Frida? You're muted, Frida.
We decided to continue to meet later because we had so many questions for you. And it wasn't that we said yes or no, we just still had questions, but you weren't at the meeting, so we couldn't ask you. So we didn't vote no, we just voted to continue.
Yeah, our vote actually was to continue and to request your presence so that we could ask you these questions that we are now asking you. That's why it seems kind of absurd. But we will have this conversation on the 14th, and I think you should come, and you may well be very satisfied with the outcome. I hope you will be. We are only trying to do what we think is right for your house and for your street. I think it's a very attractive house, and we would like to make this whole project possible for you. We are not trying to be difficult.
Well, it is difficult for me to have to delay the project, and I'm worried that the contractors will move onto other jobs. They get very busy once the snow melts, and it may be hard to get them to reschedule the work. So that's very frustrating to me.
I can
And you haven't
understand that.
even answered the question or even talked about the question of the chimneys, which is also needed before I can proceed.
So unfortunately, we can't change the open meeting law. That's state law that has to be followed, which is what is not allowing us to
Can we
reopen the
schedule a
hearing.
meeting before April 14th?
Meeting has
Yeah,
already
we
been
don't-
continued to the 14th. That vote has already been taken. It cannot be changed at
Is
this point.
there a timeline from when the application is submitted to when the commission has to rule on it?
Yes.
60
there is.
days.
60
But
days. I thought it was-
in addition to that, we have to be able to post a meeting 2 weeks in advance of the meeting. So at the very most, it
2
could have been
days.
1 week earlier.
Yeah, so the 60-day deadline would put us at the beginning of May.
Damn
Steve,
it.
I think you have to accept that what's happened has happened here.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that you didn't show up on time. You weren't very much later. It's sad that it was enough that made a difference. The fact of the matter is that it did. It's unfortunate. It's the way the world works.
Bruce,
I
did you
think at this
repeat the
point, we
name of
should,
the shingles that you had recommended a few moments ago?
I Googled Majestic Slate. It'll come up as EcoStar, but that's the product.
All right, and the other commission member who had that brochure, Greta, perhaps?
Yeah, the one that came in my mail, and I know nothing about it, except actually my son worked for Solar City and gave me advice, but this is called, and it is for existing slate roofs. It's not for new roofs. And it's called Solar Slate, slated for, and then it says Solar Slate Solutions. And potential slate, it allows you to attach solar panels without compromising the beauty and integrity of your slate roof. And then our trained specialists, not salespeople, are here to answer your question. So I don't know anything about it except it came in my mailbox. But I did a Google search, and increasingly there are solutions for slate roofs and solar. So that's good to know. Whether your slate is too old or not old, too damaged to use it or not, I don't know. But it might be worth looking into, because it is expensive to take slate off and put something else on. And if it does last 200 years, might be, I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's far less expensive to take slate off and put metal on than to repair the slate, the existing slate. That's just the cost of repairing slate significantly is.
If you, I also have somebody that repairs slate on my house. I can send you that information if you want to check with somebody else. I'm not saying you should, but it seems like a really high estimate.
Sure, yes, send me that information if you can.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for coming. And I think we should move on now to the next item on our agenda. And that is moving into the public meeting updates from the town planning staff. And this is on the proposed edits to the historic district bylaw.
Yeah, did you want me to share that, or do you all have it in front of you?
Why don't you share it, just in case
Okay.
anybody doesn't have it?
That's not it. Hold on. I figure where it is.
Rita?
I wondered if any of the public, I don't know who the public are that came.
We've got two people, Chris Skelly, who is the person who's been doing the research for us on the new East Amherst district, and Gina Etheridge, who is a neighbor.
Okay. I just wondered if anybody that was a guest wanted to speak to the other issue.
Changes to the bylaw. The primary changes to the bylaw have to do with parking, but there are
Okay.
a few other minor things.
Yep, so there's a couple of suggestions here at the beginning that Steve Bloom had made. He's not here to talk about it, but I think he's just clarifying the purpose a little and making sure that it says local historic district commission in all of, instead of just historic district commission. So any thoughts on this first phrase change that was proposed?
It should say local historic district. It should probably say the local historic district.
Yeah, it says A, but we could have it be B.
Yeah.
I guess I can't edit this document, but I'll make a note.
Okay.
Are you all happy with the addition to the purpose here? To honor
Yes.
and preserve the town of Amherst's unique historic and architectural heritage by aiding property owners.
Yep.
Yes, I am.
All right. So the other, probably more consequential change is the one that was proposed to add parking areas as a definition. And this is the definition that Nate had proposed. So any thoughts on that? This comment here, you can't see it, but Steve was wondering why 5, how the number 5 was chosen, which I'm not personally sure. It might have to do with what's allowed in other properties or in other zoning.
I think it would be because the assumption probably is that a duplex exists or could exist relatively perfunctorily, at least with a special permit. It's not uncommon. And typically the bylaw parking generation rate is 2 spaces per unit, so that would give 4. So my guess is that he's saying 5 is basically 5 or more is basically taking it out of the, it's making it apply to anything larger than a duplex.
Or larger than the sort of minimum standard parking.
Yes, I mean, I think that's the intent. That's why my guess would be 5, is he's chosen 5. It seems, I think he's probably saying that that parking areas that are smaller than that, whilst they are structures, I guess, in the terms of the definition, the consequential structures for the purposes of the commission's deliberation are parking areas that are bigger than 4 spaces. So that means we do less work. We don't have to worry. Every space that's only up to 4 parking spaces isn't going to come before us if someone wants to repave their driveway or something like that.
I guess because this is and has been kind of a sticky subject, I would like that to be, I guess, more defined or reasoned. Like if we're just speculating as to why 5 is there, or if there's a definition as to what constitutes 5 parking spaces, if there's feet or, you know, width and length. It's just, this has been a very big topic in previous applications that have been set forth. And I think Steve's question of why there's 5 versus more or less, like it seems like a really important item for us to just be guessing as to why that was in there without more defined reasons, is if we're going to be approving it, is my feeling on it.
Walker, can you get that information for us?
Yeah, I can talk to Nate
Thank
about
you.
it. And I agree that having a clear definition of what a single parking space is, so you know how many you have, is probably
Yeah.
I
key.
think I think parking areas are pretty commonly understood to be 9 by 18. So I don't think that that's, I mean, if they're compact, they're a little smaller, but I mean, the world is standardized. This certainly the world in the US is North America is standardized around 18 by 9. So I don't think there's a mystery associated with it.
I think it might be good to have the wording in there just to be clear, because maybe a smaller residential homeowner might not have that number in their head when they're thinking parking space.
Yeah, I think it would be useful for us to understand what's meant by it and the reason for it being there, because it'll help us interpret it when requests come before the commission.
Any other thoughts on that one? I think there's two other small related changes. So he also added parking areas or drainage infrastructure into structure, just to be clear that it's not, that it is something that's potentially reviewed.
Mhm. That's helpful.
And,
You
oh, this
remove
is a
something.
different,
Oh,
this was taken
This
out
is the Bruce
separately.
Colvin line. We're requiring him to stay until we can get someone to replace him.
And then this exclusion of driveways, sidewalks, and similar structures does not apply to parking areas, and that might be where this becomes a little more questionable, but I think parking areas if they're clearly defined could be taken out of that exclusion.
Okay.
And
I
believe
might,
that-
Nancy, just looking at that, it wouldn't be easier or better to say terraces, walks, driveways, and sidewalks are not considered as structures? Because when you say that these are structures, in other words, basically it's saying structures are excluded from our purview by virtue of this item.
only grade level structures, though. I suppose you could have a walk with
I suppose
stairs up to the
it's
house or something that wasn't grade level.
I suppose it's okay as it stands. It just seems a little awkward to be saying that some structures, and I would define them as not being structures, and therefore they're not in the. But that might have problems as well, I suppose.
Yeah, because
I
a terrace
believe
could be a
this-
structure, it seems
yeah.
to me.
I believe this
Okay.
wording was taken from the state guideline model bylaw,
Oh,
so I think that's why it's here.
Let me not argue with that for the moment.
And then I think that was it. So I don't think you need to take a vote or anything today, but it seems like the remaining questions are check with Nate about the Y5 or more and make sure that it's more clearly defined.
Yep, that would be really helpful if you could do that. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll bring it back to the next meeting then.
Okay, and that allows us to go on to the update on the East Amherst study. And now can we bring Chris Skelly into the room?
Yep.
And I guess, yes, that's fine.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for coming, and thank you especially for all the work you've done on the East Amherst Local Historic District that we hope is going to soon come into being. So we wanted to get an update from you on what is happening.
Okay, think the next things where you were working on the survey that you're going to do
Correct.
property owners?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted
uh,
to confirm with you that the boundaries aren't changing and that it's going directly to all the property owners within the existing National Register District. So we're not proposing sending it to anybody outside that.
Okay. Steve Bloom and I added in 3 properties, I think, that are outside the district.
Okay, can
So
you
I
send
can-
me those then
yeah,
so
I
I can
can
make
get
sure
those
they
to
get
you.
on the
Yeah,
list?
yeah.
Thank you. So do you want me to share the draft letter?
Yes, please. I think everybody received it already. We had a chance to review it, but we should talk about it.
Yeah, let's see. So hard to tell where anything is. You can see that now, right?
Yeah, can you make it a little bit bigger?
Mhm. Okay.
Thank you.
So this was taken from the previous local historic district letter. I just reworded to update it. I added some historical context. Steve added some more. And so just let me know if there's anything else that seems to be missing or anything that needs to be reworded.
Question simply on Daniel Kellogg House. It's got 1G. Is it really 1G or should there be 2
It
there?
should be 2 Gs.
Okay.
One little small question I had was somewhere in here, I think it said the number of properties included. Maybe it doesn't. Because there's lots of properties that are getting the letter, but not all of them are historic. So I'm not sure how you count how many properties are in a historic district. Is it the ones that are historic, or is it the ones that are inventoried, or is it just everybody in it?
Was that a question? I'm sorry, I was reading the letter, but if that was a question for
That's
me,
right.
if you could repeat it for me.
I'm just curious, when it says, for instance, the average LHD is around 100 properties, does that only include the properties that have been inventoried and are considered historic, or does that include all the properties within the district?
Oh, I'm imagining that's a average for a statewide average right there. It's going to be properties that are not related to being inventoried at all. It's going to be just whether they're in the boundary or not.
Okay, so when they say that the 2 existing districts have 200 properties, they mean all the properties, not just historic properties, presumably.
I'm assuming that's what they mean. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the Bags Tavern was the Clap Tavern. I think the Clap Tavern was taken down at some point a while ago. I couldn't
Okay,
read,
I'll
the whole
double check
letter.
that.
I couldn't read the letter that quickly, but
Sorry.
it's not the Clap Tavern's not the same thing as the Dickens and Bags Tavern.
Okay, I'll double check that. I just got that off Google somewhere.
I had a question.
Mhm.
I wondered about, I mean, you mentioned all the very most important 18th and early 19th century structures. If someone gets this letter and they're also in the district, but their house isn't one of these that's named, it isn't one of these super special ones, what is the justification to them for why their house is in the historic district and needs to be bound by these rules? Do you say something about that in the letter?
I did notice on the first paragraph, it said that your property is being researched. Not all properties within the district or within the proposed district are being researched. There are properties here constructed in the 1980s even. Those are not all being researched as part of this project.
Yeah, so this just says it includes the area. So you're in the area. Says this one was from the old one that I drafted the inventory form. I wasn't sure if we wanted to do that. But I guess, yeah, it doesn't really specify that just because you're getting the letter does not necessarily mean your house is included. And it doesn't necessarily specify that newer houses could be included. I'm happy to accept edits if people want to just send this back to me with, you know, comments or something too, rather than trying to wordsmith it right here.
And just to clarify that point, I mean, all houses within the geographical perimeter are included regardless of their age.
They are,
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think
they're
that
all getting the
needs-
letter.
kind of going to the previous question, I think that just needs to be clarified, because I do think, you know, a house built in 1980, they would say this doesn't make any sense to me.
And they're
Mhm.
included in review too. They're going to be reviewed even though they're a newer house. Is that the case?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They would definitely
But
be
yeah, I
reviewed.
probably should make that clear then, so
I
that they
think
know
it'll
why
be
they're
worth-
getting the letter.
It would be a review, no matter the age of the house. I mean, it could be a vacant lot, and it could be something that's being constructed right now. That's still going to be reviewed. So
Mhm.
it's not based on the age of the property, on whether the review is taking place.
Okay.
That it's good to have some sort of clarification in there that there's nothing in any of in your bylaw or state law that would require a property owner to make anything more contemporary look more historic. That's not what
Mhm.
the purpose of the district is. So
Yeah, some of that
clearly exempt. Yeah.
is
Oh, you have
covered in
okay. You
these
have that already. Okay. Good. I was going to
FAQs, I
suggest.
believe.
I was going to suggest a
Yeah.
frequently asked questions
Yeah,
page.
no, that's really helpful, having those questions.
So it does not mean that I have to make it look more historic. Here's what's reviewed. Some other questions. I just have to edit this because this is from when there was a select board. So I'm going to have to check with Nate what the actual process is now.
Okay.
And then it also includes this survey, which I also didn't change the questions that were being asked in the survey.
Well, do you
I
want
have
to
a
make
question.
that local historic? I mean, just to be consistent, if you drop it down a moment. Ideas there. Good, sorry.
Yep.
In the letter, is there anything about time frame? When they'll hear back, when the
That's
full
good.
report would be done, anything like that?
There
So
is at the bottom, please return. There's going to be a public meeting on this date. I haven't put the dates in yet. So that is
Okay.
another question, is what do we want the time frame to be? How long should we give this survey?
And what's the purpose of the survey? So the first question, if you could just scroll a little bit back up. Do you think your neighborhood is historically significant? Well, we're writing a report, or Chris is, to say that it is. So what if they say no? I mean, what do you hope to get from asking that question?
I imagine the point is to get people to stop and think about the historic significance of the neighborhood, maybe in a way that they haven't before. And in the end, the real point of this survey is to get the answer to this question, because we want a majority of support.
What
Or the-
about changing it so that it actually starts with a statement that we think your neighborhood is historically significant, and then make the first question, do you think the character of your neighborhood should be preserved?
I think that's a good idea, Nancy.
Yep, that's good. And then if you get no to number 4, do you think you'd want to ask that question after the public meeting?
You want to ask it ahead of time so you know, going into the public meeting, what people's feelings are and what their concerns might be, so that you can be prepared at the public
How
meeting.
about, is there a free right? What are your concerns?
Yes.
Oh, okay, there you go. I see it now. Thank you.
Well, I wonder if maybe number 4 should have an option there to say, overall, do you support the idea? Yes, no, and then that should be, why not?
Yep.
Well, that would be a 4A question. If no, why not?
If no, why not? Yeah.
Or if
I
not
think that would be
sure, why
helpful.
not? Because maybe they have some questions we could answer.
Right.
Yeah.
If no, we're not sure.
Why?
We
Or
would
you
like
could
to
even say
know
why or why not, and then they
why
could
or why not.
just fill it out.
Mhm.
I think it might be worthwhile, just I'm looking at the form and imagining that the form is what collects the answers, to put number 6 closer up to, oh, hold on, maybe I'm asking, oh, no, sorry, I take that back. Both, we need written responses to both of those, so I see the,
Also, I am happy to mail this survey to everybody, but the other option would be to just include a link in the letter because it's quite easy to make the survey be available online. And people could just come to the website and fill it out, or we could mail it and include a link so that everybody has the option.
I
Or we
would
could
do the
mail a link
latter.
and say paper copies are available at town hall.
I think if you're mailing,
I think you have to have paper copies because there are plenty of us. I know I got my paper copy and that was the first time that I was confronted with, I would never have gone on a link and gotten this. We're reaching out to them and a paper copy is invaluable, I think.
Well, I think you should offer both options, because
Mhm.
there will be plenty of people who will want to just do the link.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, so I guess maybe review the letter itself again before in the next week or two and just send me any comments or additional information that you want me to include, and I'll work on it and try to get this ready to go out in the next couple weeks.
Good.
Walker, I just wondered
Mhm.
what you found out about the roof, because in this letter it says roof changes, but it doesn't, it's unclear whether it means significant change the kind of roof or just change the roof.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
Number
check with
5.
the building commissioner and clarify that, and I will make sure the letter
Because
is
you could
clear.
read the way it is now, it could be read either way, I guess.
says replacement of roof material is exempt.
Well, so I read that
but,
as replacing whatever you have.
Yeah, but that might be
Not
based
put
on
on a
a
new,
inaccurate reading of the regulations, so
Yeah,
I'm
it
gonna
would-
double
it
check
would
with
help
him.
to clarify that. I agree.
Mhm.
I didn't realize this, but does the Amherst Historic District Commission not have a set of design guidelines?
Not that I'm aware of.
I would love to have that.
Okay. Sounds like that
I'm
should
not
be a
sure.
really high priority for you.
I think so too. That's a really
Chris,
nice
do
idea.
you know of,
From
do
my
you know
last,
of some
from
examples?
sitting in on the hearing just a few minutes ago, it was really clear that you need a set of design guidelines.
I mean, we have the rules and regs, but there's
It's not
some
the
parts of
same.
them that are just, not clear and it's not as detailed.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, I think you definitely need a set of design guidelines. And I've never seen rules and regs quite like that, the way they have exemptions listed in the rules and regs. That's not how it's done, and probably not best practice to have a set of exemptions within your rules and regs. It's actually counter to the bylaw. And I'm curious if you have a law department or town council, sure where you get your legal guidance from, if they reviewed those rules and regs beforehand.
Chris, the
It was
reason,
before me.
if I'm understanding, we have occasionally given the building commissioner the power, because what we were trying to do was to avoid us having to sit in determination and therefore delay projects on very simple requests, particularly, for example, heat pump, air source heat pumps, which have exterior compressor condenser units, and we found that we could create an exemption for those by giving some clear instruction to the building commissioner that allowed the building commissioner to approve. And there's a couple of other things like that too. We just found that we were causing people to have to make applications and delaying 3 weeks or whatever to get to us in order to for us to make a rather perfunctory determination. So if
Do those all feel like minor enough changes that that would just be granted through a certificate of non-applicability?
I think so. I mean, we were basically putting the determination into the hands of the building commissioner, and we wanted to make sure the building commissioner didn't feel prevailed upon by this. But it seemed to be important to maintain good public relations, if you like, with the town, that every little thing didn't have to come to us, because it was a minor tribulation for people to have to come to us before they could get the mechanical contractor to come and site their heat pump. And we said, well, if it's only one heat pump and there was a paragraph of this descriptive condition that said, if these conditions apply, then the building commissioner can make the decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I supported that approach, because I think we don't want to have people getting up in arms that we are too picky and delaying people, because the town's already got this reputation of making it difficult for people to do work and so forth. And so we were trying to avoid adding to that mood or that sense.
Well, I'll just go back to, I know we're a little off topic here, but I'll just go back to really recommending a set of design guidelines for you for the future. I can't imagine being in your shoes, trying to serve as a commissioner and not have a set of design guidelines in front of you. Much better for all of you to have a set of design guidelines, much better for the applicants to have design guidelines, and for East Amherst, a much easier sell for a local historic district if you can point to them to, here's our guidelines, here's how we review all these applications, and here's the kinds of things that are apt to be approved in a district, and these are the things that are apt to be not approved in a district. It just gets everybody on the same page.
I think that's a
think
great
that
idea.
It makes good sense. Chris, I'm wondering if you know of an example of
That's
that
what I
we
was
could
gonna ask.
look to as we think about how to go about doing such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you could just Google around and look at examples of design guidelines. But I certainly have some. I have some here, and it is something that I offer. I'm doing 2 sets of design guidelines right now for some other communities, as a consultant. But you could just Google design guidelines and get a good sense of what's out there as well. There's quite a few cities and towns in Massachusetts that have design guidelines right now.
Do any that you have particularly think do a particularly good job? Any towns?
Yeah, let me think about which ones would stand out. The ones that I like, the ones that I put together, that I think work the best, have every architectural feature that you could think of in an alphabetical order. So today, when we were talking about solar panels, you guys could have flipped up through the booklet and found S, and it would said solar panels, and there would have been a page or 2 just on solar panels.
Perfect.
Chimneys would have come up, and you would have flipped to a different section of the guidelines at the beginning for C, and it would have said chimneys. And the applicant could have done the same thing today, and you all would have looked at the same page and said, oh, this doesn't meet our design guidelines for this reason. I mean, and then the applicant would have known all of that before even coming to the public hearing, because he would have been familiar. I mean, ideally, because you notify all the property owners annually or something like that you have design guidelines, and here's how to access them on your web or in your web page, or at the time of the application, it's clear that there's a set of design guidelines that should be reviewed. it's just, it's all those ways that you really try to get everybody onto the same page and help the applicants understand the process. And it's really your best. I mean, obviously there was plenty of frustration there during that public hearing.
Right.
And you really want to reduce that as much as possible as a district commission. And guidelines, I would say design guidelines are your best friend in terms of public relations.
I think that makes really good sense. Walker, is this something that you can research for us?
Yeah,
I
I'll
think
start
if-
taking a look.
If
see
you
what I
could
can
send us
find.
a couple of good examples, I
Mhm.
would love to see us have something like that. It would give much more clarity to the work that we do. And I think Chris is absolutely right. It would give clarity to people who want to make changes to their houses, and everyone would be on the same page. And people would feel that it was not just a random decision that we're making.
Yeah, I can look into it.
And Chris, you,
Thank you for that suggestion, Chris.
yeah,
That's
and you
really,
do this professionally, is that correct?
Yep. That's
Yeah.
mostly what I do are things like that, design guidelines.
So maybe
planning
the
related
town of
things.
Amherst, maybe that's something we could look for funding for. I think that would be great.
okay. We have already approved the minutes. I didn't realize that was on our list. Okay, do we have any unanticipated items that have come up within the last 48 hours?
I would like to go back and address the earlier part of the meeting and expectation of attendance. Not meaning any disrespect to anyone, but it really became disrespectful of our time that we had discussed the case and there was no one here, and then void of that 20-25 minutes, let's rediscuss it as if like we had no meeting. And we, so it felt very disrespectful of my time to ignore that nobody was here, and that's why we decided to discuss it later. And I think a big part of it could be the expectations that are given or not given for somebody to attend the meeting, and even a timeline for, like, we're going to be discussing your case at the beginning of the meeting, and it could take as much as 5 minutes, and then we move on to the next one. Like if they're like number 3 or something, kind of letting them know it could be as quick as 10 minutes into the meeting that you're already up, even though you're number 3. But it just obviously unraveled very quickly, but I felt like it was a very big void of disrespect that our meeting had taken place. We had been talking about things, and now let's just restart the whole meeting as if kind of that 25 minutes hadn't taken place at all. And it could, like I said, it could just strictly be because of expectations. He didn't realize he needed to be here, or when we were discussing his case or anything like that. But to avoid it in the future, just kind of thinking about how we can make all of the expectations clear, timeline, agenda, whatever, however we want to kind of categorize all of that.
Thank you, Nicole. I apologize. I'll take responsibility for having done that. I was hoping just to get a few pieces of information that would help him come to the next meeting with more appropriate information, but it went on much too long, and I absolutely agree with you. Betty.
He said something that I wanted to follow up on, which was, he said he might have to ask for a waiver for financial costs. And I didn't know what that was, and if that's something we're supposed to be concerned about.
It's a good question.
I think that only means that we have to take in consideration if we request, no, you can't do this, and somebody has hardship financially to do what we asked, that they can get a waiver. So for example, if we really said you have to use slate and he says that's going to cost $60,000, then he's got a good case for getting a waiver.
And who does he get the waiver from?
Well, that's my point. I don't think we have waivers. We either grant or we don't grant a certificate.
It's the certificate of
Yeah.
hardship.
Pardon?
Oh,
Yeah, the certificate of hardship is in the bylaw.
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it has been determined to
to-
be, or if in the event of an application for a certificate of hardship, the commission shall determine whether, owing to conditions especially affecting the building or structure involved, but not affecting the district generally, failure to approve an application will involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise. So if for some reason his roof was much more expensive to fix than any other slate roof in the district, you could
Yeah.
say you would apply a waiver.
Hmm.
I think you would
I've
have to
never-
make that case, though.
That's never come up in 7 years of my
Mhm.
being on this, that anybody asking or approaching that. I can see why it's a good idea perhaps, but then you've got a whole nother set of guidelines you need.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah,
I
I don't know how
disagree
you're
with
supposed
you,
to
Bruce,
determine that.
because we had a case last year where someone wanted to put some plastic
Vinyl siding?
Vinyl siding.
no, it was not siding. It was the upper porch roof.
Oh,
I mean,
right.
porch. And we asked for wood initially, and when they priced it out, it was very expensive. And I think it was going to be $70,000 to replace the wood railing around the upper deck. And we said, in that case, you would not have to do it. So I think it was a waiver of sorts. We asked them to research what the cost of replacing it with a proper, wooden railing would be. And when they gave us the numbers, we said, all right, this is perhaps unfair.
Yes, I've been aware that we've factored that into our decision making, but I wasn't aware that there was, if, for example, we made a determination that they could appeal it or seek it, actually make a specific application for essentially a variance or a waiver. But so I don't know how that would work, but we'll see.
One more quick point about that. I think it's acceptable to just leave a hearing open if the applicant isn't there. You can move on to other agenda items so that you're not wasting time, but just don't vote to close the hearing until you're done with the rest of your agenda, and that gives people a chance to show up even if they're running late.
That's
Yeah,
true, but then you've got to remember to do it.
You do have to remember to
Well-
do it.
Mm-hmm.
And typically we
think-
do it when we've finished with it.
I think going back to that, I mean, should we just, if somebody's not there, then just bump the entire discussion, because
Mhm.
I guess my frustration, to be honest, was like, we discussed it. We said we've got to wait because we don't have enough information. And then he comes and then we rediscuss, so if as a meeting, if they're not there, then we don't discuss it all. We bump the whole thing to later to see if they show up late. I don't,
I've been on other boards that have done that. They just bump the entire hearing if the applicant isn't there and just rearrange the agenda as needed so that they aren't
The thing is-
discussing it twice.
We had a public hearing and we had a public meeting, and we only had one item in the public hearing. So we were going to have to move on from the public hearing to the public meeting at some point. And I think that's how we got into this situation.
Yeah, that makes
I think
sense.
I think you can have them open concurrently, though. You can leave
You
the
can.
hearing open and
Okay.
go ahead, do the
Yes.
meeting.
All of these esoteric rules are,
It's just
Yeah,
awkward
I'm
and
sorry.
it's not normal. I mean, people either show up or they don't. I don't think I've ever had anybody show up in the manner that we had. People are either there on time or they've decided, and we have not plenty, we frequently have folks who decide not to attend and they don't. And we deal with it or we continue it.
I think there was also the misunderstanding that he was expecting a site visit, and probably at the site visit, a lot of, conversation with the owner comes up. And I think we should clarify what he read about this site visit being
Yeah.
necessary. That seems to be kind of confusing.
Yes, I agree. I'm not sure how much his indignation about not having a site visit was manufactured under the circumstance, as opposed to something he was really looking forward to.
yeah, especially if we had to arrange it according to our schedules.
Yes, I mean, site visits are difficult to do, and if we were making site visits on every project, I think most of us would say we don't have time for this, and we wouldn't have 7 commissioners.
It's possible that if the building commissioner said that it is in fact required, you could designate some people or just say, you know, a minimum of a certain number of people rather than having to get everybody to coordinate together.
Yes, I'd be surprised if it's required. I mean,
Yeah.
the planning board, which has got a much higher need to see sites, makes a conscious decision about whether we feel we need to do a site visit or not.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't
I think
didn't
it's up
agree
to
with
us.
his reading of the bylaw, but I do want to double check.
He
Yes,
was,
would you just double
you-
check that for us, Walker? Just so that we have clarity about what our expectations really are here. Is there public comment? Gina Etheridge is in the, is an attendee, and does she have something she wanted to say?
I'm not.
I'm not
seeing
hearing
any comment.
anything.
Yep.
Okay, so our next meeting date is the 14th, and we want to set up a meeting after that for April 24th to be confirmed. Can everyone come on April 24th?
I thought April 14th was,
We've got April 14th set up. Actually, April 24th is a Thursday. Is there any,
It's the 28th.
it should be the 28th.
Yeah. I can put to be confirmed on the agenda of the 14th, see if we need to have one
Let's
on
do
the
that and
28th or
see what
not.
we've
Yeah.
got, because if we
Because
have,
if you don't have any hearings, then
right. And does that give us enough time? It gives us 2 weeks, right? Okay. Good. So we've asked you to do a lot of things, Walker. But if you can get some clarity for us on the number of parking spaces, on whether we really are required to have site visits, and get us some examples of design standards, I think that would be super helpful to us.
and then the other clarification was changing of roof materials
yeah,
as to whether
what's included
or
in
not
that.
that's
Yep.
in our purview.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I want to thank Chris for his suggestion. I think that's a great suggestion. It would feel really good to have that information.
Yeah.
So,
For sure. Okay, is there anything else that anyone wants to ask before we close this meeting? Do I have a motion to adjourn? Rita,
motion
a second?
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
second.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I
Right.
All right, Chris, thank you very much for coming to this meeting and for your excellent suggestions and for your hard work on our behalf.
Yeah.
Thank
Very
you,
much
Chris.
appreciated.
sure, I'll see you next month.
Okay,
Thank
great,
you.
thanks.
Bye.
Thank you, Walker.
Thank you.
thank you, Walker.
Nice
Yeah.
to meet
Thank
you,
you.
Walker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great having you on board, Walker, and I really appreciate all the work you've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Usually,
problem.
usually we don't have such cantankerous meetings.
Yeah, I know.
No, it involves people's homes. It
Yeah,
involves
I
money,
get it.
So I'm not
Rental
surprised.
properties in that case.
All right. Well, have a good couple weeks.
All right, thank you.